get that little message pop up there.
Well, I'll turn it on anyways. That's it.
So I'd like to
I know, but I don't mean
here. And I'd just like to introduce everybody. I'm Scott Teeples, and most of you already know me. I'm in Oregon, and I'm just going to ask each of you to tell where you're from. Ann Ingen.
if it makes a difference, just mute me.
From McMinnville, Oregon.
Okay, Ann's from Oregon. And Loretta, where are you from?
I'm from Prineville, Oregon.
And Linda.
I'm from Amity, Oregon.
And Arlene.
I don't think
Dickinson, North Dakota.
And Joanne.
Hilo, Hawaii.
Yeah.
Well,
Aloha.
I'm
Wow,
here, and if I
aloha.
get it, I get
Valerie.
it. I might have to come and watch it another day.
Where's Valerie at?
Never get down here to do it, but I need to make time.
Thought we had a
I
Valerie
have
on.
all this stuff to do.
Barbara.
Oh my gosh.
Hi,
And I
Honolulu,
think
Hawaii.
more fun.
Perfect. Is it, and I hope I pronounced this correct. Got trying to read the names on here. I had a Galinda. Must have left. How about Chris? Says Chris on here, but I think
Yep.
that,
Chris is here from Dickinson, North Dakota.
wow, we got a couple of them from North Dakota. Abby. Abby must be or something gone away. And I got somebody, it says Richard, but they're not Richard.
Yeah, Scott, it's Jane Mahaffey from Nebraska. We share, so it probably has his name on it.
Yep. All right. And Bonnie. She's from Oregon. She's at work, so she's going to kind of be off and on a little bit right there. She looks like she's muted. She's probably busy. She's got a slave driver at her job.
Good morning, all.
Good morning. Did I miss anybody? I think I got everybody. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Oh, we got Leah come in here a little bit. Leah, are you there?
Good to see everybody.
Where's Leah from?
Hey, I'm from Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, right here on the water.
Oh, so now you're going to watch mine now. My presentation, huh? Okay. So you can judge me. All right. So I'm recording, and you guys already know that. So I got a couple of little things I just want to do. I want to share a little. I see some of these cartoons come across. It's going to be on electric cars, and I'm sorry if I'm biased, but I am. But I see a few little cartoons come up on there. Can you guys see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Need a gas generator to charge your $120,000 super electric car because the grid is overloaded. And all new electric car, it's ideal for the man who works close to home. We're going to talk about that. And then this is one that doesn't have a caption, but it kind of speaks for itself. See a coal burning generator there, charging up that nice electric car. And by the way, somebody says this is not real, and actually in Australia they're fairly common. They have a diesel engine that charges your electric car.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
And then this one right here, I think those people in Chicago last year could relate to that. When they were all electric cars were frozen and couldn't go anywhere. And I like this little right here. It says, when driving electric car, never turn into a dead end street. You're stuck on the road with no outlet.
Right.
Now
And then a great news here. So we got some background noise there.
Talking to GMA overnight. She, we need you home and we're doing everything we can.
Electric green.
She called her visit to the island deeply unsettling.
And I like this best. It says next week when we break the 100, and by the way, we're supposed to be over 100 in Klamath Falls either today or tomorrow and Friday and Saturday. And
Mm-hmm.
I'd like all you guys to park your electric cars so we can run our air conditioners.
Yeah.
Oops, I went too fast on that one right there. We're going to talk about this. Your electric car needs a battery that'll be $15,000, and that might be an underestimate at that.
Oh,
And then the EPA says we can't give them lumps of coal. What else can we give that no one wants? And how about electric vehicles? And we're going to talk about that. And then says, it says, did the other reindeer not tell you the electric sleigh would only get you to as far as Norway? So we're going to stop at that. Anyway, and he snuck in there on me. And welcome to the rest of you that came in a little bit late. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get started. Okay, can you guys see that? Okay.
yes.
Okay, I always like to ask because the presenter can't see it. And so this is one I actually wrote a year or so ago, and some of the facts have changed a little bit, but I just want to talk about some of the basics. I'm actually going to go through the history of it. I'm going to talk about some really good things about them. I'm going to talk about the bad things about them and the questions. And like I said, I am a little bit biased, so you'll have to get me under control there a little bit right there. So some of my goals I have on here, and by the way, please interact and ask questions, interrupt me if I get going too fast. Bonnie always says I get going too fast, but I don't want to waste your time and take too long. Last month, it was a wonderful presentation. It was pretty long, but I'll tell you what, it just seemed to me like time just flew by. So thank you again for doing that one there. It says participants gain understanding what are electric vehicles and some of the basic history. And this is something I learned a lot about on the history and some of the understanding the good, the bad, and the ugly, I call it, and the questions about electric vehicles. And I did lots of places for resources, so I'm giving those. I give credit to where they're at. And then I do have a handout that I handed out, and I gave you a quiz, and I sent out that quiz, and we're not going to go through it right now. You can, if you happen to print that quiz off, you can actually fill out the answers. This is an open book test, and you can see how you do it. How did some of you guys print that out?
No.
Yes.
Okay, and you can kind of look through it. Some of those are interesting questions. Okay, and
Yeah.
what are electric vehicles? And you'll hear them referred to as an EV, is defined as a vehicle is powered by an electric motor that draws electricity from a battery and is capable of being charged from an external source. And so when we talk about EVs, they're all electric vehicles, and there's all kinds of different types, and we're going to talk about some of the different ones that there's all kinds of ones, and we'll talk about those a little bit. So just, when you hear the term EV, they're electric vehicles. Sometimes you'll see some acronyms and some others when they get into hybrids and plug-ins and other types of things. And this is something I found really interesting, is what is the history of electric vehicles, or EVs, and why are they coming into our lives? And the first small scale electric cars, and if you look at that, I thought that was a wonderful picture. It looks, and I you can sure see why they'd call those kind of a horseless carriage. Innovators in Hungary and the Netherlands and US think to the future. And the dates that we're going to talk about in a minute are really surprising to me, how early it actually started. 1832 was the first electric vehicle, and a guy named Robert Anderson developed it. And but it was until the 1870s, and I didn't even think about this, that electric motors were being used. 1832, and I think of some of my heritage as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or Mormons. They came into the Salt Lake Valley in 1847. So, you think about 1832. And then in 1889 through 1891, William Morrison from Iowa, he first electric wagon, sparks interest in electric vehicles. And I didn't realize myself that they'd been around that long. And then in 1899, electric cars gained popularity compared to gas and steam powered automobiles. Electric cars were quiet. And you know, if you didn't know your history a little bit like that, there were actually some attempts to make steam engine powered automobiles, which you can only imagine how hard it would be to go out there. You don't just go out and jump in them. You have to get the fire started up and get it going. And they were noisy, and you need water and everything else. And they were very popular, especially with women, because they were simple to operate. And then in 1900 to 1912, electric cars reached their heyday. By the turn of the century, electric cars were rage all across there. Did anybody realize that they were that early?
No,
No, I didn't know either. I learned a lot by, it's one of these things where when you do the research, you learn a lot about it.
Yes, I had heard about him like back in 1908 or so, so.
Yep. And then in 1901, Thomas Edison, who is one of my heroes in my life, he thought that they were going to be the thing to go. So he works on electrical vehicles, were superior mode of transportation, and worked on building a better battery. And that's the same situation that they work on now. Is the battery is the real center of an electric vehicle and how well it operates. And so there's a little picture of an electric car. And then in 1901, the first hybrid. And when they talk about a hybrid car is one that can operate on both gasoline and a battery, or each one. And does anybody own a hybrid or an electric car?
My daughter owned a hybrid Volkswagen.
Okay.
I had some friends who had some.
But nobody owns one themselves.
no,
I have
and
a hybrid.
my daughter they had one for a while, but they couldn't keep up the payments because of a loss of a job and surgeries and stuff.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
have
go ahead.
No, I have a Toyota Prius hybrid.
Okay. And I don't want to belittle them all, because there are some really if I was to buy an electric car, it'd be for around town. And I'm going to talk to you about why that would be. It says first mass-produced Model T, which you remember Henry Ford makes gas-powered cars widely available and affordable. And that was the one thing he did, is he made them affordable. In 1912, the electric starter was introduced, helping to increase gas-powered vehicle sales even more. Because before that, you had to go out there and hand crank them to start them. And we used to have a tractor when I was a kid growing up that you had to it was an Allison Chalmers, and you had to hand crank it. And my dad told me, he says, never wrap your thumb around because if it kicks back, it'll break your thumb. And then in 1920 and 1935, it was a decline in electric vehicles. And the thing that really happened to it is there were better roads, and the discovery of cheap Texas crude oil contribute to the decline in electric vehicles. By 1935, electric vehicles had more or less just disappeared. Filling stations popped up all across the United States, making gas readily available for rural Americans, leading to the rise in popularity of gas-powered vehicles. So they kind of went away for a while. And then, as all of us are on here can probably remember, over the next 30 years or so, cheap, abundant gas and continued improvement of internal combustion engine. But in the 60s and the 70s, and lots of us can remember the 70s, the oil embargo and how gasoline it tripled in weeks sometimes. I tell young people about that now, and they can't hardly believe it. I said, it'd be like if gasoline was $3.50 a gallon today, and 2 months from now it was $10 a gallon. And they said, well, that never happened. Well, I think all of us kind of thought the same thing too. I have a little story. I remember when my wife and I pulled into a little gas station, and it had moved it to 80 cents a gallon. And I got out and I got back in the car, and I says, I'm not paying 80 cents a gallon. And Bonnie says to me, she says, what are you going to do? Walk? So I got out and put gasoline in. In 1971, over the moon with electric vehicles. Over the time, the first manned vehicle drives on the moon. And some of us can remember that. And it was an electric vehicle that drove across there. Gasoline engines wouldn't work very well on the moon. 1973, the next generation of electric vehicles. Many big and small automakers began exploring the options. General Motors developed a prototype for urban electric car. And you can see that nice little electric car there. And one of the successful electric cars at that time was the Bring Vanguard's city car. And I thought, man, what a beautiful little car. It kind of, you know, my wife and I, we owned, when we had all of our kids here, we had the little Geo Metros. They were, our Geo Metros were much better looking than this car. A wedge-shaped compact car that had a range of 50 to 60 miles. So you can imagine the problem with it. 50 to 60 miles, you're going to drive too far away. His popularity made it the 6th largest automaker in the United States in 1975. I've never even heard of him before.
Back into the 1832. Isn't that interesting?
Okay. 1979, interest in electric car fades compared to gas-powered cars. Electric vehicles this time had drawbacks, including limited performance and range. And that's probably one of the things that really slows down electric cars is just their range, causing interest in electric cars to fade again. So you just kind of see them coming in and out. And then 1990, 1992, new regulations, federal and state regulations created renewed interest in electric vehicles. The result, automakers began modifying popular vehicle models into electric vehicles and enable them to achieve speeds and performance closer to gasoline-powered vehicles. And if anybody's ever ridden an electric vehicle, you'll find out that they are pretty fast. They have a lot of torque, and they do move up really fast there. In 1996, the EV gains a cult following. GM releases the EV1 electric vehicle that was designed and developed from the ground up. The EV gains popularity again. Lots of us can remember 1996 pretty easy. 1997, the first mass-produced hybrid, Toyota. And did somebody say they own a Prius?
I do.
Yeah, how do you like it?
Well, my son gave it to me because he got another car. And so I got it used and it's 17 years old. It's a 2007, but 2 weeks ago, the battery went out and they want 6,000 for repair, and that's not the labor.
Okay, yeah.
That's why I thought I'm going to watch this.
Okay. By the way, I do have this. The PowerPoint is available if anybody wants it. I also have a leader's guide that is all made, and I can email that to anybody that just emails me and asks there, and it'll have it has everything, including the handouts and the quizzes in it.
Thank you.
I would like a copy of it because I'm missing so much of this when this goes off.
Okay, I'll do that, Loretta. And then in 1999, building a better electric car, it says behind the scenes, scientists and engineers are working to improve electric vehicles and their batteries. And if we go right back to Thomas Edison, and again, they're working on the batteries, and they're still working on the batteries. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about the batteries and some of the good, the bad, and the ugly about the batteries. And then 2006, Silicon Valley startup takes on electric cars. Tesla Motors, which a lot of familiar with that. And they start getting a car that has a range up to 200 miles. Now, Bonnie,
it's like I'm not a bad person, and now I feel like I'm gonna.
Somebody needs to turn off their.
yeah, somebody needs to mute. Okay.
The host can't mute everybody.
Oh, well, I can mute that individual, but Bonnie, are you on there? Sometimes she's a co-host. So I just need somebody who's got somebody talking in the background. It's interrupting quite a bit. Okay. Anyway, so the cars started getting up to 200 miles. Now, Bonnie and I live in an area where a very place that we go quite often is about 86 or 90 miles away. If we had one that only got 200 miles, we're going to be pushing it, especially in cold weather, of not making it back. Now, some of the vehicles get better than that. Some of them get less than that. 2009, 2013, development of a nationwide charging infrastructure. They installed 18,000 residential, commercial, and public chargers, which sounds like an awful lot, but it's still not enough, including chargers installed by automakers and other private countries. Today, there are about 8,000 public charging locations, and this presentation was done about a year ago, so I'm sure there's probably a few more than that, but there's still some very, very isolated places. Okay, and then I'm sorry, in 2010, I got my screen up there and I can't get rid of it. Anyway, it's covering up part of it. The first commercially AV, the Chevy Volt, and some of those you've heard about those. It's a plug-in hybrid. So you can plug it in, you can also run it on gasoline. 2010, Nissan launches the Leaf, and an all-electric zero tailpipe emission in 2013. They began assembling the cars. You see the progress right there. And then 2013, the electric vehicle battery costs drop. So finally, the most expensive part of it, and the research that I'm getting right now is, and who said they had to have their battery replaced?
I do.
And you said it's how much?
It's 6,000 altogether because it's a battery and the battery computer.
Right.
And that excludes labor.
Right. So you got $6,000 plus whatever labor is going to take on that. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, but it takes a very specific skilled person to do it because that's something that hasn't been taught. But the cost of batteries go down. So they are getting better batteries, but again, I want to talk about some real drawbacks on those. When you find out some of the facts, it's absolutely appalling. 2014 electric vehicles and a multiple of choices. Consumers now, you have hybrids, you have plug-in hybrids, you have all electric. Today, there are currently 23 plug-in vehicles and 36 hybrid models available. Now, this is a year ago when I wrote this, so there's maybe a few more than that right now. 2015 to 2022, the future of electric cars. And it says electric vehicles hold the potential of helping the United States create a more substantial future in the United States. If everybody went to it, it could save up to foreign oil up to 30 to 60%, while lowering the carbon pollution as much as 20%. But one thing I want to talk about that, and if you guys are listening to the news and that, China produces more CO2 than the rest of the world combined. They have absolutely no restrictions on what they're doing. So we can do what we can do, but you know, the rest of the world, China and India are tremendous polluters of the world. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what the difference is. Any questions on history? Okay, what's the difference between an HEV and an EV? A hybrid vehicle, or an HEV for short, is a vehicle without the capacity to plug in, but it has a new electric system and battery. It driving energy comes from only fuel. And so an HEV is one that actually, when you put on the brakes, it actually charges your battery a little bit. If you're going downhill, it charges the battery. A plug-in hybrid, they call it PHEV, is a vehicle that you plug in capacity. It uses energy for driving either from the battery or liquid fuel, such as be gasoline or diesel. And then it says, what's the difference between an HEV and an EV continued? And it says an electric vehicle, often called an electric vehicle or EV for short, is a vehicle. It gets its energy entirely from the battery and must be plugged in. And that's how lots of them are. And then basically any vehicle that's plugged in, a PEV. And this is some interesting facts. So we talk about all of the energy that's used, and we talk about where is that electricity coming from? Because we go and we plug it in and we feel really good about the fact that we're not burning fuel. We're not burning oil. We're not burning, oh, wait a minute. And I look and I go, 60% of electricity generated in the United States comes from coal, natural gas, petroleum, and other gases. 60%. And about 18% comes from nuclear energy, which kind of surprised me because I thought that we'd kind of got away from it. France is almost 100% nuclear, and we've gone away from it right there. So 22% of it comes from new renewable resources, such as what they consider solar, which would be your wind, your solar, and so forth, like that. And these percentages are changing some, but basically, if you charge your electric car, you got a 78% chance of it using fossil fuels. Do I have a question or comment there? Oh, electric charging stations cost by level, and there's different types. There's two basic types of charging stations, and there's a level 1, a level 2, and a level 3. And we're going to talk about what they are and what the difference is. I learned a lot about this myself. A level 1 charging station, it's very easy to use. A lot of times the little charger comes with your car. They charge about $300. They don't require professional installation. You can plug them into your outlet. If you had an outlet outside your house or whatever it might be, you could plug it in there. There's some real disadvantages on it though, and we'll talk about those in a minute. So those are easy. That's a level 1. Very, very easy, pretty inexpensive to hook up if you've got an outlet outside your house. However, suppose you want to dedicate one charging station to lessen power demands on your home circuit. In that case, the price for a level 1 charging station is between $300 to $600 and another $1,000 to $1,700 in labor cost. Someone's got a little child that's watching the lesson. Level 1 stations offer an average power of 1.3 kilowatts. And anyway, basically, the main thing I wanted to highlight on this, if you're charging it, you'll get about 3 to 5 miles for every hour you charge it. So if you charge it for 10 hours, the most you're going to get is 50 miles out of that vehicle. So they're very, very slow. It could take up to 3.5 days to fully charge your vehicle. Obviously, that's not the way you want to go if you're traveling across country. Very, very simple. It would be a nice one if you were using your vehicle around town and you pulled into your driveway, made sure you plugged it in, it'd be ready to go for the next day. Level 2 charging stations. The price to install electrical circuit for an L2 EV charging station is between $400 and $1,700 for a single port station, and $800 to $3,400 for a dual port station, meaning you could charge 2 electric vehicles if you had them. And then it's got some other costs on there, and you see costs between $500 and $700 and $3,500, and that does not, as you mentioned on the repair of that car, the installation cost. And if you're going to pay an electrician, you're going to find out that they're not cheap anymore. For serious residents charging of 100% electric vehicles, level 2 charging stations are the best, but you're going to have to invest some money in it. And then it says find electric charger installation pro near you, and level 2 chargers charge approximately 12 to 80 miles per hour. So if you charge it for an hour on a level 2, you're going to get somewhere between 12 miles on that charge for an hour or 80 miles. So basically, you're still going to have to charge it overnight. And they plug into a 50 amp. And if any of you guys own an RV and you plug it in, you'll see there's a lot of your RVs are rated at 30 amps and some of them are rated at 50 amps. And you find out that they're pretty expensive to install. Level 3, and this is where we would really like to be on electric cars, and that is level 3 charging station, cost an average between $20,000 and $50,000. They're not available for most home because of the voltage and the draw on it. And that's another thing I want to kind of bring up, is the draw on our electrical system. And I kind of had that in there on that joke on, can you guys not drive your electric cars so I can run my air conditioner? Because I can guarantee you my air conditioner will be running in the next few days. And then also on the level 3 charging, you get about 3 to 20 minutes for a range per mile. So in 3 minutes you could do, much faster. Level 3 charging stations are not currently available in residential use. Electric charging station additional factors, parts and labor account for most of the project, but additional cost is an impact for the owners of it. Permits, and also just like everything else, when you do electrical, you have to have permits. And it depends on where you're at. $100 to $200 just for the permit. This takes I'm going to kind of a little review on this. Like level 1 chargers can take up to 40 to 50 hours to charge a battery from empty. A lot, so they're very slow, very, very slow. I know that I had a guy that was telling me that somebody had bought the F-150 here in Klamath Falls, Oregon, which we're in Southern Oregon, and they drove to Portland, which takes us about 5 hours to drive in a normal car. And I think they said it took him 14 hours because he had to stop twice and charge it. Just charging time. Because he couldn't find a level 3 charger either. Level 2 chargers can charge a BEV from 4 to 10 hours. Okay, a level 3, these are what we really need. And there's just not a lot of them available, 80% in about 20 minutes to an hour. So if you're traveling across country and you happen to find a level 3, you can be charged in 20 minutes to an hour. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later about how long does it take you to fill up your car full of gasoline. Sometimes just 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it might be. Okay, and then here's another thing is right here. It says, and this is a real factor. It says currently very few, if any, states charge a road tax on electric vehicles. I know Oregon does not. So all and any electrical vehicles on the state of Oregon do not pay any kind of a road tax. And the big road taxes always come from your gasoline. One of the reasons why, if you live in California, or if you hear about California, other than Hawaii, which we have a couple on here, California is the highest priced gasoline in the United States, in the continental United States. And a lot of that is because of their high road taxes that they have on them. So it puts the burden on the rest of us that are using fossil fuel. Electric vehicles also weigh up twice the weight of gasoline vehicles. They are very, very heavy. And so now they're looking at various methods of charging road taxes on electric vehicles, trying to figure out how they should pay their fair share. And it says, do electric vehicles pose a higher fire danger? And the statistics that I found out that they are about the same or even a little bit lower. The biggest problem with electric car fires is they burn longer and hotter, and even the batteries can explode when they get on there. So there's some things, and we're going to talk about that too. Also, it takes special special firefighters to get it out. It says most frequently electric fires ignite from the battery. The two main reasons are manufacturing errors and overstressed batteries. And I can tell you, when it gets really, really hot, like it's going to get across various parts of the United States, batteries do very, very poor. Electric batteries, and if you just look at one on your cell phone, and we'll talk about that again a little bit later, or if it's too hot or too cold, they don't do very well. And it says electric car vehicles are fires are extinguished. They burn longer and hotter. Lithium-ion batteries. Fires can take thousands of gallons to water to put them out. It takes special agents to extinguish the fires. Is it cheaper to drive an electric vehicle? Chances are maybe. And it all depends. And we're going to actually do that. And I sent out those handouts, and I hope that some of you even might have cheated and looked at the one on the overall cost. Here's how to make sure there are plenty of climate and air quality reasons to buy an electric vehicle. I mean, all in all, it is cleaner for the environment if right there immediately. But where's that energy coming from? But is it cheaper to drive? A lot can depend on your EV's price tag, fuel cost to maintain, and whether you save money on the long run. And it depends on how long you keep your car too. Sticker price on electric vehicles, and I know that they're working on getting them down there. In 2021, it was $20,000 more than the average vehicle. There has been some tax incentives, which has helped, but you know, it's just like anything else. If you say tax incentives, you're saying, well, I'm getting a tax incentive from the government. And as I always like to tell students when they're talking about it, who is the government? Where is that money ultimately coming from? It's ultimately coming from the rest of us. Cost of gasoline versus gasoline. Here's why EV owners win out. Going electric means you skip pricey trips to the pump. In other words, you don't have to go to the pump anymore, but you do have to you have to be able to charge it. Electric car costs about $485 a year compared to about $1,117 for gasoline. Seems to me like I went down the gasoline in a car the other day and it was $1,100 to fill it. So you spend about 20% less money on an electric vehicle compared to gasoline to electric. Electric vehicle range and efficiency, that is how far they will go on the electricity. How much does it consume? How many kilowatts of electricity it consumes at 100 miles? You can see some of the Teslas have done very well, but the more budget-friendly 2022 Chevy Bolt EV is comparable with the 29 kilowatts per 100 range. Charging your car at home also cause your electric bill to rise. And if you guys know, if you run your air conditioner in the summertime, and those people that live down in Arizona and Southern California, Texas, lots of times their cooling bill is much higher in the summertime than their heating bill in the winter. Maintenance costs for electric vehicles. And we've already talked a little bit about that, thanks to somebody already owning one. Without spark plugs to replace, oil to change. Seems like it'd be a really good one there. Electric cars do not require some basic, still require some basic maintenance like service checks and rotations. But in general, electric cars typically cost half as much to maintain and repair as gas-powered cars when they need repairs. One thing that they're having too is they're having a hard time finding people that know how to maintain and to service them. Calculating the cost of your typical vehicle, you can figure out your savings by calculating the upfront cost of your specific model minus tax rebate and then ongoing cost. And I'm going to show you a chart at the end, and it was on one of the handouts that I emailed out. Good facts about electric vehicles. Electric vehicles are more energy efficient. 75 to 90% of the energy used in an electric car goes into the motion. It makes the car drive. Fossil fuel only runs about 30%. Not very effective on fossil fuels. But again, where are we getting that electricity from for the car? Electric cars have incredible acceleration. If you've ever ridden one, I've ridden in a couple of them, and when they push the pedal down, we would call it push on the gas, they move very, very quickly. They move right up there. So there are some advantages there. They can be really cool. It says electric cars look strikingly different. Electric cars like those produced by Tesla and BMW look distinctive and are filled with all kinds of exciting technology. And they're finding out some of that technology, it's not really good. A lot of your electric cars are coming without a radio in it. And I didn't put that in part of the lesson, but that's something I've been learning about. And the reason why they don't put radios in them is because it interferes with the technology of the car. And they've had problems with it interfering and making the car not run right. When driving an electric car, it is pretty amazing about whizzing down the road with no noise except the wind and the tires on the road. Reminds me when I used to do some sailing in a sailboat. Safety. EVs include the same safety features as nearly all cars, including anti-brake, anti-lock brakes, stability control, and all the other things. Electric vehicles perform as well as gasoline counterparts in government and insurance industry crash testing. So they're pretty even on that right there. Big advantage is no tailpipe emissions, not directly. Very little noise pollution. You don't hear them on there. Matter of fact, some of the EVs are actually, the federal government is looking at actually requiring that they actually have a noisemaker. And I don't know if you ever had if you ever been in a parking lot and you hear an electric vehicle come up to you. Sometimes if it wasn't for the noise of the tires, you can't hear it. Doesn't use any engine oil like we do in there. It does use some oil for lubrication of the bearings and so forth. Okay. It says less direct environmental impact. EV chargers, when powered by renewable sources, have less impact on the environment. And I know they just took 5 major dams that were producing electricity out of the Klamath River for other reasons, but we lost all of that renewable resource when they took those dams out. Some bad things. For almost 10 years now, electric vehicles have been the talk of the car industry. From the early Tesla models to the days Mustang Mach-E, and electric vehicles have tried to show their future personal transports, what they want it to be. However, EV manufacturers have hidden some of the downsides of those vehicles. Electric vehicles are still far from perfect. So here's why you should think twice before purchasing one. And some of the things I've learned even since this is that they're almost recommending that you don't buy an electric vehicle. If you want one, lease it, because for one thing, they have found out that electric vehicles, their value, they drop by about 50% when you drop them off in value when you drop them off the parking lot. And even gasoline cars drop in value, but not quite that fast. Short range anxiety, you can't drive them. You can't drive as far in an electric vehicle. Some of the best electric cars now are well over 300 miles, many of them only 150 miles. Now, Bonnie and I look at this, and if we're going to go to Medford, that's 90 miles away. We're going to have to figure out where to charge it while we're over there. And if we want to drive over for the day, we got to find a place to charge it and then wait for it to charge before we come home. And to recharge them, they need at least a half an hour of a dedicated high voltage. That's a level 3. Compare that time it takes to fill a gasoline in a car. And I don't know about you guys, but it only takes, 10 minutes or whatever it is. It's a good time for a good potty break. And on a lot of your cars now, and I'm actually driving a Honda Pilot, and I can get a little over 400 miles on the road. I can get over about 400 and plus miles on the road. And there are vehicles, gasoline vehicles, that you can get 500 miles. The big thing.
If you have,
Go ahead,
Scott,
yes.
when you stop and you are recharging, where you recharge it, are you charged? Do you have to pay a fee? Just like you have to pay for your gasoline, but do you have to pay for your electricity to charge your car?
My understanding is yes. And it's quite a bit less than gasoline, but again, you got the problems with the time, unless you've got a level 3 charger. And then as they've found out and if you guys saw the news last winter in Chicago, in the Chicago area, and they had that severe cold come in there, they had hundreds, I think, of electric vehicles that were at the charging stations. They couldn't charge them, extreme cold. they had vehicles that were actually plugged in and people were sitting in them and the batteries were going down faster than the charger could charge them because they had to have the electric heaters on if they were using an air conditioner, and they dropped tremendously in their efficiency. Long charging times, and we talked about that, anywhere from a few minutes to several hours, depending on there. Now, if you have your Teslas and you're in a level 3 charger, you can do about 80%. And the reason why they use that 80% in 20 to 30 minutes, because that last 20% might take you another hour. Because a battery, once it starts to charge, it starts resisting the charge quite a bit. So they usually charge them to about 80%. They never charge them entirely full because it takes too long to do that. Even though Tesla and Porsche have made significant improvements, charging is still far from the speed of a gas put on there. Only takes a few minutes to put the gasoline in. Trip planning problems. And I like this little map that I found on here. If you're traveling someplace, you got to figure out where the charging stations are. And I know that with the internet, that it's getting better. Lots of your major highways will have some of them along there. I know that some of your rural areas do not have those there. A little town that I grew up in, Utah, it was been a couple of years ago, but a woman was there with a Tesla, and she says, I need to charge my Tesla. And they said, well, how many miles can you go? And she said, I got 8 miles left on it. They said, where's the nearest charging station? It's in a little town, another town, 50 miles away. So she called AAA, and my sister's telling me about this because she lives there. AAA comes out with a diesel generator on the back of the truck and charges up her electric car. Kind of counterproductive in my eyes. And then also, we've already talked about this, weather conditions and temperature changes are really bad on them. So that's why electric cars are only really suitable for short trips. You can't forget driving. You almost can forget driving from coast to coast. Now, on the 14th of July, I'm actually going to drive to North Carolina and pick up Bonnie. And I'm driving my Honda Pilot. And I've only got 3 or 4 days to get there. I can only imagine trying to do it in an electric vehicle and the number of times I'd have to stop and charge. Mostly good for urban use. Simply put, it's great for using around town. Also, if you run out, you can also always call a cab, an Uber, a bus, or other form of transportation to get home. And this is where I want to get into it. And this is kind of a real pet peeve on mine. It says, whereas it's true that electric vehicles have 0 emissions, do you ever think what it takes to make one electric vehicle? And I was just reading an article last night. They have to move and process 450 tons of materials to produce one Tesla battery. 450 tons of earth has to be moved, processed to get the lithium and the copper and the aluminum and everything else out like that. And they talked about how many gallons of diesel those machinery uses right there. The process of making a chunk of lithium battery as well, their disposal is polluting, since right now lithium-ion batteries are not recyclable. They're working on it, and I hope that the technology comes right there. Batteries are the real problem. Also, electric batteries demand more electricity. That comes from the thermoelectric or nuclear power plants. They're extremely dangerous, choking the earth. And there's been some pictures of in China, and China right now is the #1 maker of electric cars. And they are burning coal and everything else like that to make them. And they all want to send them to the United States and to Europe, United Kingdom. Rising demand for electrical power will only raise the level of global pollution. This is actually far beyond what internal combustion engines are doing now. Too expensive? Since electric cars feature the latest, most advanced technology, they cost more. For example, the range of electric car for sale on the current market will top models. Some of them are $100,000. Now, there are cars that are less money than that, The Volkswagen Golf, Nissan Leaf, electric vehicles, they cost more. And we talked about that earlier. Usually they're about $20,000 more than a car that's of the similar model. Repair difficulties. If you have to have it repaired, I don't know in Klamath Falls where I live, where I could take an electric vehicle. I would probably have to have it taken to Medford, probably the closest, which is 90 miles away, for any kind of specific repair on it. Also, servicing vehicles are quite dangerous because of the car's a mechanic consists of a battery pack under high voltage. It can also cause a fire. Again, we talked about special extinguishers. You're talking about extremely high voltage in some of these cars. They're very, very heavy. And cars, electric cars, 450 pounds extra. Now, I didn't put this in here, but I've been doing some research on trucks. You know, they want a big push for semis to do this. But if they put the batteries in there that they need, a half to 2/3 of the weight of the vehicle, of the load that would normally be for freight, would be in the batteries it takes to move that vehicle. It says, however, some of the high extend models like the Tesla Model X, the battery weighs over 1,000 pounds. So some of those cars coming down the road, they weigh 2.3 tons. Also, heavy vehicles mean more tire wear. It's more wear on your tires. It's more wear on your on the roads, and cold temperature issues. And we've talked a little bit about that. And some of you have ever had a cell phone, and at least even my Apple phone, and it's a iPhone 15. And if I leave it out in the car and it's cold, I go out and the battery can be completely charged, and I go out there and the battery is either dead or near dead when it's really, really cold. So I try not to leave it in the car. I'll even take and put it in my pocket or something like that so it doesn't lose that energy. Electric cars do very, very poor in cold weather. And it says, since the bulk of electric vehicles market is in the northern hemisphere, where winters are cold, snowy, and cold weather, batteries drain a big problem for everyday use. And this could be life-threatening because you're out there and you run out of energy and you don't have, and you guys have probably seen that on the news where sometimes people in electric cars are sitting there and they have absolutely no heat. Now you can do the same thing with the gasoline. And then cold temperatures do affect vehicles and steal their range. And you can lose anywhere from 12% to 41% if you have the heater on. Anything below 40 or above 115 degrees Fahrenheit, they're not going to deliver peak performance. Now, I don't know if too many of us are going to be of 115. I see today, I was looking at the weather thing, I think it's going to be 123 in Death Valley, California, but I'm not in Death Valley. Some of them are just plain ugly. And I just look at the one on the top there, and that one's ugly. And actually the one down below is actually a Tesla. And I don't know, I just look at that and I just go, that's actually one of their trucks. And I'm just going, I just don't like the appearance of it. It looks, but that's my opinion. And threatening existence economy models. It says, and this is something that really happens. You know, it says if the oil companies lose their monopoly on energy, the oil-rich nations lose their authority on global political scene, the world could be leading to another crisis. And so if we all went electric right now, there could be some major problems with the global economy. And it shouldn't be that way, but it could be. And we could have millions of people out of work. And the major car companies, and if you've been reading anything like that, they're not quite so sure. Matter of fact, they're pulling back on them. If you read anything about it, I listened to the radio quite a bit and national news, and they're talking about there are electrical vehicles on some sales lots they can't get rid of. People just aren't buying them like they wanted to. So they hesitate on doing them. So none of the big name players are going into fully electric anytime. Matter of fact, Ford, who was making their Ford F-150 Lightning, I think they are going to stop making them. And that was one that was pushed a lot by the government. And here's a big major thing. The EV craze is limited to a few first world countries, the United States, Europe, a little bit of Australia, but third world countries, they don't have the infrastructure, the electrical infrastructure. They can't have electric vehicles. It's just not practical for them. You go to remote parts of the world, they're going to be using fossil fuel. Even China, the world's largest market, has a hard time implementing any initiatives for electric cars. They're one of the largest producers of electric cars in the world, and they have one of the smallest percentage of people driving them. They want to send them all to the United States and Europe. Buyers still consider it a gimmick. Lots of us. And then I got a little, I asked you guys how many of you own one, and apparently the only one that owns one was given to him. Most car buyers still consider EVs to be some kind of a sales trick. By the way, we may get comments while I'm going here. Don't let me do all the talking. Car consumers are still waiting for the mass-produced electric vehicles that will fully replace gasoline-powered models. But to do that, they'll need to introduce some improvements that draw buyers to the EVs. Okay, an EV can't be the only one in your household. And that's mostly because to me, electric vehicles are still kind of a around town type thing, or short distance and so forth. And I know you see them out on the road. If you travel quite a bit, you'll see them on the freeways and so forth. And it's not that I'm against them, but boy, there's some problems with charging them and so forth. You could, however, use electric vehicle in the city for everyday use. If you want it just for your family, it works really good. I know that even years and years ago, there was a lot of delivery trucks, little delivery trucks that were using electricity. But again, it's because of short range. A hard sell. Most drivers lease their electric vehicles and return to their dealer after a few years to get a new model. And as we've already talked about, the reason why is they're estimating that the batteries are only going to last 4 to 6 years. And from what I've read, and even from what we got today, it could be anywhere from $6,000 to $20,000 for a new battery, depending on the type. People are looking for deals, and the used car are still extremely cautious when it comes to electric vehicles. They don't know how the used electric vehicles act or how to maintain them properly. Many don't know some of the common problems with electric vehicles. Electric vehicles can be very expensive to repair when they need to be repaired. And then we've talked about this, EV batteries have an estimated life of 4 to 6 years. Usually cost $20,000. I think the price has dropped down, and a shredded electric battery can yield recycled metals, but right now it's cheaper to just make new. There are places where there are used electric batteries that are no longer be able to use, that are just stored. Very, very few of them are being recycled. They're just stacking them up. Complying won't be easy. Batteries differ widely in chemistry, and construction makes it difficult to effectively recycle them. Cargo space. The batteries really don't take up too much room. Where you take an engine out, usually it's pretty much right there. The biggest thing is the weight of the vehicle. And electric vehicles rely on power plants. You have to have a power plant, which mostly still use fossil fuels. Over 60% of it is fossil fuels. Could be problematic for states like California, where the energy grid is already pushing beyond its limit during hot summer months. So residents could be forced to experience rolling blackouts. So they have a blackout. Where are you going to charge your electric car? Where are you going to run your air conditioner? And electric batteries are hard on the environment. EV batteries produce adversely impacts on the environment. EV batteries consist of materials like nickel, lithium, cobalt, and others, which are energy intensive to mine. And I talked a lot about that right there. These mines are often mined in regions with very poor environmental records. Argentina accounts for 21% of the world's lithium. And I want to on the sheet right here, I really want to point out right there. Many worrying about mining could cause massive destruction, corrupt an already fragile ecosystem, pillage the country's natural resources, and all in the name of the green progress. In many countries, and if you do a little research on this, children as young as 6 years old are used in the mining process. And they're predicting that lithium, by the way, is extremely poisonous to the system. They're predicting many of these young children will never live to be adults because of the mining, the stuff they're breathing in, the contact they're having with it physically. Electric vehicles wear out tires faster. We talked about that. You can get about, and it doesn't say it on here, but you're going to get about 60% of what you would on normal tires. Electric vehicles are not all environmentally friendly as they appear. And some EVs are what I call a feel-good feeling for many people. They look at it and they say, man, look at this nice green car I'm getting right here. However, battery charging and various manufacturing processes still negatively affect the environment. And it talked about, it's still rare metals, and it talked about those right there. It says Chile produces the largest amount of lithium, 8,800 tons per year. Talks about all the different countries that are on there. Republic of Congo, where it lies on the surface and is picked up by miners who include women and children. Cobalt is toxic to humans, and most of these miners work with little or no protective equipment. And if you go online and you do a little research on that, you'll see pictures of where there are women and children, and they're working in some of these mines and absolutely no type of breathing apparatus or gloves or anything like that. They're making physical contact with it. It has been suggested that we struggle to create large amounts of electric cars in Europe in the near term. Simply put, we don't have significant access to the sources of lithium to make the batteries, and we don't have the factories to make them either. Europe wants electric vehicles, but we don't have the resources to make all these electric batteries they want. Making electric cars creates actually more emissions. The greenhouse gas is emitted by the manufacturing of an electric car. And I talked about how many tons, 450 tons or something like that, to make one battery for a Tesla. Raw materials for making the car can be mined, and the process of mining creates a lot of greenhouse gases. And I can't remember exactly how many gallons of diesel those equipment run every hour. Of course, the above is true when manufacturing a petrol or diesel car. In fact, taking into account the whole process for making a petrol car, diesel releases about 7 to 10 tons of CO2. And again, electric cars are only as green as the power sources. The environmental impact on an electric car can increase or decrease considerably depending on how the electricity that charges the battery is made. So if a car is recharged using renewable resources, negative impact on the environment is far lower than that charged with a coal-fired station. And again, there still are not enough charging points. Currently, there's 8,000, and this is probably a year old, so there's probably 10,000 or so forth. Some of you may have seen places where they put in a couple of new charging stations in Klamath Falls. And again, it takes a few minutes to fill it up with gasoline, 30 minutes or more to put it in electric. And that's if you're using a level 3 charger. Okay, many people get around this by having their own charging point, put it in a home, but that's not enough. And here's a real point. That's not an option for people who live on streets. You live in apartment buildings or terraced housing or on the street parking. It means you have to park someplace and you can't charge it. What if everyone plugs in their charger when they arrive home at they arrive at work at 9 a.m. or when they get home at 6 p.m.? How will the surge on the electrical system last? Problems with the cost and maintenance of charging stations. There is a tremendous cost of setting up and maintaining charging stations. EVs put a tremendous strain on the electrical infrastructure. And you can see when this what does everybody do? They turn on the air conditioner. That's what my wife and I do. We turn on the air conditioner. Politicians are rushing for a transition to electric vehicles, yet small businesses will pay for it. California and Minnesota to Washington, D.C., some governments are pushing politics to eventually eliminate gas-powered vehicles. And I don't know if I have it in here, but I think it's California has 2035. They don't want any gasoline engines in the state of California. And Washington State's right with them, and Oregon's pushing right behind them. These politicians come in various politics come in various shapes. In some states, utility companies are looking to raise electrical bills to pay for the electric vehicle charging infrastructure.
Scott,
Yes.
when you say certain states are by a certain year banning gas and diesel cars, if you're visiting that state, are you prohibited from driving there?
No. There will be some gas stations left and so forth like that. They've already talked about that. And on the slide that I've got up there right now, California recently announced a full ban on gas and diesel powered by 2035. California right now has a ban on all gasoline engines under 45 cc that you cannot buy. Now you can still use them if you have them. Lawnmowers, small chainsaws, weed eaters, so forth. They all have to be electric now in the state of California. And Minnesota is finalizing EV cells mandate this summer, and New Jersey and some other states are working on it. But the problem is going to do is that they would like to fully eliminate it. But there something that bothers me is that in just north of Los Angeles, there's a big, it's not a mountain, we'd call it a hill here, but they have to pump their water over it, and they're using electricity to do it. And you know what their standby is to pump that is diesel engines. If they had electricity go out, because that supplies all the water for basically all of the residents of Los Angeles. Says, well, these policies may not take effect for years. The hardship for business owners, consumers starts now. Small businesses are already struggling on some of the higher costs and so forth. But basically, they're gonna try to get some of this money from taxes from businesses. And so that's going to be a real problem on that for the infrastructure of the electricity. Okay, here's the one that I really like to point out right here, the real cost of electric cars versus gas cars. So you go and you buy a one for $57,000 and you get a $5,000 rebate. The insurance is $1,900. Basically, it's the same. You're looking at the cost on the gasoline, you know, you're looking at about 20, that's $22,000 difference. You don't get any kind of rebate on a gasoline car. If you look at the insurance you're looking at is actually a little bit cheaper on a gasoline car. And my understanding, the reason why that is because when an electric car gets damaged in an accident, they are much, much more expensive to fix. Yearly operation, you see there's a big advantage of an electric car, $485 compared to $1,117. Maintenance of electric vehicle is $900 compared to $1,200, a little bit of saving on electric vehicle. 6-year longevity, 6 times 32.95 is $19,770, and the $23,664 for the gasoline vehicle. So over 6 years, it actually costs you, if I do the math roughly there, it looks like about, is that $13,000 more? Electric vehicle is going to cost you about $13,000 more. You think you're saving money, but Not necessarily.
Scott, can I interject something here?
Please do.
Okay, back on that slide, if our battery with electric battery is only going to last 4 to 6 years, you're going to pay another huge chunk for a new battery. However, like we run our vehicles a lot longer than 6 years.
Mhm.
We had a 2001 Ford Ranger that put over 250,000 miles on it, and we traded it in 19. So I mean, that vehicle didn't cost us much after we had it paid for.
That's correct. And I'm
So
exactly. I'm driving a 2018 Honda Pilot, so it's already 6 years old, and I'm not planning on getting rid of it until the wheels fall off. So this is a really interesting one. This kind of sums it up. You know, when people say, "Well, electric vehicles cost you less money."
So Scott,
Yes.
um, with these mandates coming along, like that slide you showed that said that California was mandating that by 2035 only, you know, there would be no gasoline powered cars on the permitted.
They can't sell, they can't sell them.
They can't
sell
sell them. So would you expect that with that kind of, I mean, I'm thinking about people of limited means and single mothers. I would you expect that that kind of mandate would necessarily bring in with it um deep cutting of the prices of electric vehicles? If that's what the only thing you want people to drive, you're going to have to make it affordable for the, you know, the those who don't have that man with the big pot of money, right, to go buy an electric vehicle. Like, so am I saying that clearly enough? That was sort of
Oh, I agree.
choppy, but how can people of limited means be expected to participate and fold into this plan to eliminate gasoline cars? I don't get it.
I don't know it, you know, and it's a tough situation. You know, it really is. And I sometimes I don't think our governments, our people in our government, because we are technically the government, I don't think they think through that well enough.
I have another question, Scott.
Yeah,
In
that's what we're here
California,
for.
if we in California, say in 2035, what's to say that Californians won't go to some other state, buy cars, bring them back to California? Or if I'm from Nebraska moving to California, what's that going to be? Are they going to have an outlaw that after a certain year you can't buy a car anywhere else either? Bring it in.
Actually, right now, if somebody, because we're only 20 miles from the California border, if we
Okay.
have somebody who lived in California, and we have several little communities just south of us in California, and they came into Oregon and bought a gasoline weed eater or a gasoline lawnmower, and they take it into California, they're breaking the law.
Oh, goody.
Even right now.
Then we have a whole bunch of law enforcement issues, huh?
That's correct. That's correct. And it presents a real problem. And I don't have the answers. And I think you guys have brought up some very good points on this, on, you know, what is the person that can't afford to live through this? You know, what do they do? And it is really tough. It's really tough. I know and you guys, and most people don't know this, but California has enacted, and so far the courts have allowed, they now have an exit tax in California. If you live in California and you move out of California, you pay income tax in California for the next 3 years, even if you moved to North Dakota.
Wow.
Because they're losing their population very rapidly. They're having people who have money that are moving out because of the highest taxes, and some of the laws are going in effect. So they have an exit tax now, and I am sure that they'll be challenged in court.
Mhm.
So, and I do appreciate all your comments. I have a real concern on this. And personally, I think electric cars would be great if I drove them around town. And then just a little summary, lots of things to consider. I have a video that I want to show. And it's only about 4 minutes long, but it's really a good one here. And we'll watch this for a second. Now the choice is up to you. Let's see if we can get this to play.
There's a push for every driver to switch to electric, while almost
Can you guys hear that?
Yes.
Okay, I got to make sure I click the right buttons on the bottom of when I say share screen.
every automaker has invested billions of dollars into expanding their electric vehicle lineups with hopes that you will make the switch. Consumers need to do the math and see what works best for them and their budgets, and not be pressured into what may or may not work for you. What are the costs? Many are debating between electric and gas costs, and that rages on because you really need to make a wise choice. But which one will save you the most money overall? Let's take a look at the numbers, and there's plenty to think about. Welcome back to Car Coach Reports. I'm Lauren Fix. If this is your first time here, we give you more than car reviews and first looks of new vehicles. We give you car smarts because knowledge is power. Make sure to subscribe and click that little bell for notifications so you don't miss anything. When you compare the cost comparison between gas and electric, there are 6 factors that can fluctuate but are critical for you doing the math. Most EVs still have higher than average starting prices and discouraging plenty of cost-conscious buyers. But the cost of regular gasoline-powered cars don't have any tax credits. And then there are factors like auto insurance, general maintenance, and resale value to consider. And you also have to weigh the cost of filling up the tank at the gas pump versus charging at an EV charger, either at home or at a public charging station. Here's how everything breaks down. The purchase price of the average electric vehicle is about $55,000. That's considerably higher than the average four-door sedan, which runs around $35,000 according to Kelley Blue Book. Tax credits and gas savings can save you money. However, it's going to take a few years to make up that potential $20,000 difference. But there are plenty of lower cost EVs like the Nissan Leaf, the Kia Soul, the Hyundai Kona, or the Chevy Bolt EV. The average EV is much more expensive, and EVs still demand a larger financial commitment than gasoline-powered cars. Now, the average cost of a home charger and installation is around $2,000. Tax credits can help lower the price of an EV. The average federal tax credit through rebates vary from state to state and by brand, ranging from $2,500 to $7,500, and plug-in hybrids offer lower rebates, and of course there's no rebate for gas or diesel vehicles. Insurance is a big factor to consider. The average cost of an electric car is 23% more expensive to insure because the car itself and the parts cost more to repair and replace, while gasoline-powered vehicles cost less to repair if there's a collision. The cost of fuel, as the price of gasoline rises, so does the cost of electricity. And the average fuel cost does fluctuate as the government is not helping lower gasoline prices. But as of today, about $1,120 a year is the cost of gasoline. Well, the annual cost to operate an electric vehicle through the cost can differ depending upon where you are, is about $485 a year. And if you have a home charger, it's the best way to save a few dollars and save on those fees. What about maintenance? Well, you're going to hear people say there's no maintenance on electric vehicles. That is not true. If there are moving parts, there is maintenance. And there's less moving parts on electric vehicle, but the annual cost is around $900 a year and around $1,200 a year for a gas or diesel vehicle. Remember, the tires wear out quicker on electric vehicles. Here's the bottom line. The average length of time drivers keep a vehicle is about 6 years, with an average yearly cost of about $3,300 for electric vehicles and $3,900 for gasoline-powered vehicles. But what are those totals? Well, when you total up all the factors, it's $71,770 for EVs over 6 years, or $58,664 for gasoline-powered vehicles over 6 years. Now, you're never going to make up the initial expense difference over the lifetime of that vehicle, and the expense of an electric vehicle can add up, but so can it on a gasoline-powered vehicle. Spending tens of thousands of dollars on any vehicle is a big decision for most people, so it's worth digging deeper into the true overall cost of each vehicle, and considering looking at some of the lower cost vehicles might be an option for you. No matter which kind of car you end up with, we have plenty of tips on our website and also in my book, Lauren Fix's Guide to Loving Your Car and More Ways to Save Money. Check out our website and the rest of our channel. If you got value from this video, make sure to like and subscribe for more videos like this one. If you have additional questions about electric vehicles or comments, because you always do, put them down in the comments down below and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. I'm also answering questions on my social media, all platforms at Lauren Fix. Check out our website, carcoachreports.com. We have content in English and Spanish, and I'm also hosting a podcast, Total Car Score. It's available on all platforms where we talk to people behind the scenes and to see how this industry ticks so that you have car smarts. Thank you so much for your support on our Patreon page, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you for being here. Any questions or comments?
It's your favorite chili lime seasoning or more cayenne. Buen provecho. The perfect summer pasta salad does exist, and it's this Mexican street corn pasta
Thank you,
salad.
Scott, for the lesson. It was very informative and interesting.
All right.
Thank you, Scott. That was interesting. I enjoyed that.
Okay, I'll have it on the Oregon website, the link for it. And also, if anybody wants the leader's guide for it, just send me an email and I'll send it to you. I can email it to you. I can email you the PowerPoint and anything else you need on it right there. Next month in August, I am doing again, but it's going to be very informal. It's going to be about the new National FCE high school age essay contest. And I want to go through that and discuss it a little bit. Like to see lots of good participation. Oregon did it this year on their own, and I thought we were very successful. So,
Good.
thank you very much.
Thank you,
Scott.
I had a
Scott.
ton of questions. I found your presentation answered so many of them, and now I get to go out and share it.
Okay. Thank you, Janet.
Jane, thanks. You too. Learned a lot of information. Some was not a surprise, but I even got the Richard that showed up on your
Oh, man.
screen to watch too. So we're both informed at this point. So
I can see this. I can see him a little bit right there.
and yes, I'll probably be emailing for the rest of that information. So thank you.
And I'll be in that boat tomorrow morning again.
Okay.
Oh boy, looks like fun.
Yeah, the last 2 weeks I've been fishing in that almost every morning except for this morning and Sunday.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, well, good.
Thank you guys.
Did you get a catch? Did you catch something?
Who asked that? I
Jane did.
don't ever catch anything. I had two 12-year-old girls in my boat yesterday morning, and they caught 14 and they caught 9. I call them hogs or trophy trout. 20 inches long. One of them was 20 and a half inches long. And I could show you lots of pictures. I'd rather make a presentation on that than I would about electric cars. I just enjoy taking people fishing.
Well,
Good
thank
for
you
you.
much.
I'm a free fishing guide, and that's my boat in the background there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again, Scott.
Thank you guys. Thank you very, very much. Thanks,